as we wrap up 2023 here on Newsline, bringing you all the movers and shakers, people, corporate startups that were in the news for right or wrong reasons. When we talk about corporates, there is no bigger name than Adani Group. With me in the studio are Kartik Malhotra, Krishna Kumar, gentlemen. Adani Group. Adani Group's story was where we began, where it all began, 24th of January. From that day onward, up until now, Adani continues to be in news.
Oh yes, Shweta. And you know, at this stage, it's difficult to say whether Adani has been in the news for the right or the wrong reasons, because it's one story which has done the full circuit, starting the year on this very, very negative note. 24th of Jan, Hindenburg Research comes out with a report titled How the World's Third Richest Man Pulls Off the Largest con in corporate history, right? So and that really sends the entire Adani Group stocks into a dizzy. And you know, and initial reports that came out during the year suggested that as much as $150 billion worth of market capitalization of all listed Adani Group stocks were wiped away. But as we come to the end of the year, Adani has actually been able to pare most of those losses already, given whatever has happened in the whole year. Now, what were the charges that Hindenburg Research had framed against Adani Group, right? I think there were two basic problems that Hindenburg Research had identified. One of them was misappropriation of funds, if I'm not mistaken, but I think the more critical one really was this minimum public shareholding, MPS, being violated. So there was this MPS violation by way of which Adani Group and promoters and people linked to the promoters of the Adani Group held more equity in the group than they should have legally. And the second issue coming from the MPS was this whole question of people taking stock price manipulation, people taking short positions or entities taking short positions on Adani stocks and profiting by virtue of doing that. So the year started with Hindenburg Research. SEBI obviously came in. Thereafter, we had the Supreme Court appoint an expert committee to look into the matter and to look into SEBI's own investigations into the matter. The expert committee appointed by Supreme Court did not find any problems with SEBI's investigations. SEBI, on the other hand, hit roadblocks. Out of the 24 issues that SEBI had to investigate, it did complete its investigation in 22 issues, but there were two more issues, and those two issues were about opaque structures that SEBI was hit against, because these were offshore entities not operating in India, and it was difficult for SEBI to penetrate through those opaque structures to understand who is at the top of that value chain, of that food chain, and who has actually ended up making money. And then the next obvious question would be, even if you somehow arrived at who made money, how are they linked to the Adani promoters? So this whole question of short selling, has not yet really been able to come to surface, come to light as far as SEBI's own investigations go. Now, multiple dates, multiple changes, delays, all of them sort of culminating towards the end of the year, where SEBI said it does not need any more time, and it told the Supreme Court that it is ready to go ahead and file its final report and understanding of what really went through. Through the midst of this entire, you also had OCCRP doing its own investigation, Financial Times opening another DRI investigation of 2014, etc.
Well, that merits an entire discussion. Let me quickly get in Krishna as well. Krishna, it wasn't just Hindenburg, because some of the Hindenburg ghosts came back to haunt Adani by the way of an OCCRP report, which is an NGO, which also alleged that some of these opaque structures and identified the people who are behind these opaque structures, which were directly or indirectly linked to Gautam Adani. That was number one. Number two was the Financial Times report, which opened, another can of worms by the virtue of coal price manipulation. Those were two serious reports, two allegations to top the Hindenburg allegations. It's been a tough year for Gautam Adani.
Right. All I can think of is that after all of that talk about from OCCRP to the Financial Times and so many of these publications, and the moment the word came in that Hindenburg's report cannot be taken as gospel of truth. That's all that the Supreme Court said. You know what happened to the Adani stocks the day after? it made all those Financial Times reports look like absolute child's play. And to me, the momentum behind the Adani stocks and the momentum behind people wanting the Adani stocks to not fail was too bigger than anything else that Adani. I mean, the word that I can think of when it comes to Adani is when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. That's what it looks like at the end of it, because let's face it, it's Indians and Indian consumers who are invested in stocks and mutual funds, where mutual funds are invested in Adani stocks, and you wonder about whether your mutual funds are giving you the kind of returns or not. So from a consumer perspective, whatever they thought they lost at the beginning of the year, they've got that back and more by the time the year 2023 rounded out.
At least in some of the stocks.
And that is the Supreme Court saying, right? And then there was another case which was Adani Group wanting to develop a port in Sri Lanka, looking at a US-based lender, and when it goes to the US-based lender, the US FDC says that the Hindenburg Research is inconsequential.
Yes.
So, and that
To
gave
us.
the second, to them for the loan they were giving out.
It was very consequential, Dalal Street
the
and
word
the stocks.
inconsequential became completely consequential for the stocks of Adani Group. So I think Adani Group has pretty much from the month of Jan 24th, when it was, I mean, till 23rd Jan, it was obviously, riding on its 10-year-old wave of stock market highs. And then 24th, when the stocks came crashing down, thereafter, it has more than pared most of its losses, whether it is Adani Enterprises, whether it is Adani Ports and SEZ, whether it is Adani Total, whether it is any of the businesses that Adani Energy, Green Energy, and now look at the fillip that Adani Enterprises is actually going to get by way of green energy. I mean, less than a few weeks ago, the COP28 summit actually ended, and energy transition green energy transition really became the buzzword, and something that the entire group which was participating in COP28 came to agree on, that the energy transition has to happen. And guess who's going to be one of the biggest beneficiaries, or two of the biggest beneficiaries of India's energy transition from fossil to green? It is going to be Adani and it is going to be Reliance. And these two companies, obviously the green verticals of these two large behemoths of corporate India, are absolutely well poised right now to ride on this energy transition wave. So overall, I think it has been a year of ups and downs, but by the time we come to 24th Jan 2024, we might see actually all the losses pared and the Adani Group, sort of stabilized on all fronts. So,
all right.
I think the Hindenburg Research report is done and dusted. We haven't yet seen SEBI's report final.
Well, should we write it off just as yet? Because the Supreme Court order is still awaited, and we don't know whether it's going to be a clean chit or not. I know the commentary looks like they're not taking the Hindenburg allegations very seriously.
Not, in my understanding, Supreme Court is not going to hear the matter of Hindenburg Research versus Adani Enterprises. The matter limited to the Supreme Court, and it has kept its judgment pending in that matter, is only to find out did SEBI do its due diligence. Has SEBI done its job correctly or not? And the Supreme Court has reserved its judgment in that matter up until now. But one way or the other, whenever the Supreme Court judgment comes out, that judgment is actually a judgment on SEBI, on the market regulator, and not specifically on any misgovernance, on misdoing on the part of Adani Enterprises or Gautam Adani. And that is completely SEBI's own investigation, SEBI's own remit. So even if, and a big if here, even if there is some sort of a direct or indirect correlation derived between the top of the food chain of those opaque structures and some historic linkage to the Adani family, one way or another, is perhaps going to move the markets or move the stock a little bit for a day or two. Beyond that, is there going to be a long-lasting repercussion on Adani Group? Sitting in the end of December, awaiting the SEBI report, I doubt there is going to be anything negative happening on Adani.
Right, and that is the story of Adani Group that started on a not so very positive news when it came to the Hindenburg Research report in January of this year. Come the end of 2023, it appears Adani seems to have reversed most of its fortune. Now, the Gautam Adani is back again as one of the richest man, top 30 richest man in the world.